What did I read in 2025? It's February in the next year. But I said I was going to do this, so here I am. Where we last left off, I had talked about Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. The next book I read was The Wedding of Zane. I think Zane by Tayeb Salil, who I believe is Sudanese author. I went through the Reads the World Challenge in 2024 and I added a bunch of books, and then I didn't read any of them in 2024. But that is how I got to this book, which I read in 2025. And it is actually not just one book, it is a collection of 3 short stories. There's like 2 short stories and then 1 novella. The novella is The Wedding of Zane, the title. And it is actually more like a classic, I guess one might say. I don't know anyone from Sudan to ask, but I would assume he's a pretty famous Sudanese author because he was translated into English in like the 60s. That would make me think he's kind of the top of the literary canon for people to be translating his work back in the day. And I gave this 5 stars. Were there any female characters? No. But I was really immersed in a story in a land I'll tell you about. The novel. The Wedding of Zane is the last part of the series of things that are included. It is a story that takes place in a village in the Upper Nile. Zane is the village idiot. Everybody in the village knows him because he'll just be walking around. And the thing with Zane is he will find a girl that he decides to fall in love with. And it's a good thing if this happens to you because that means very soon you will find your husband. So, like, pretty soon after Zane declares love for you, you will be married. Not to him, but to someone else. So, what happens when this lovable idiot, town fool, is the one getting married? What does that kind of mean? The beautiful thing about this story was I just felt you can kind of sense there is this external world outside the village, and in the village they're very steeped in tradition, and the external world, modernity, the kind of modern chaos that is coming historically for this village, you can feel it trying to encroach and it's being pushed back. And finally, when this village fool gets married, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that there's a really beautiful closing image of him just like crying at the wedding. There's something that was just so marked about that. Finally, this tradition, this kind of like folk knowledge that he represents, that's kind of coming to an end. As Zane is getting married, we know that the city officials are going to come in and finally build this railroad. So it was just really beautiful. I had never heard of this. I love looking up classics from other countries for the storygraph world challenges, even if I don't wind up reading them that year. Like, I think this is a perfect example. I would have never heard of or known to read Tayeb Salil. And there was a great introduction that really gave more history about the author and context. I believe the author wound up moving to London. I really recommend this. Since it was translated in the 60s and also written then, it was a bit dense for my brain because I live in a time of short form content, and not in like a way, in like a, oh, I need mental exercise way. Even with the historical and cultural information that I was missing, I felt really engaged in the story. I'm sure that if you do a little bit more research into Sudanese history and culture, there will be even more that kind of jumps out at you. I really enjoyed the storytelling. I was very moved by the imagery. As I mentioned, the intro was really good to read beforehand, but it was also nice to come back to it after finishing the collection because it's like one of those things where like if you read the intro to like a John Steinbeck book, they'll be like, and as this famous plot twist that happens in the story that you're about to read. So like maybe if you don't want to know all the details, you could skip it, but it is nice to come back and like kind of have the author of the introduction unpack the significance of a lot of the stories, and then having just read it, you're like freshly familiar with the content. There were also these really cool line drawings that were in the book. So I'm kind of like, maybe I should get a physical copy of this. I don't know. Maybe if I can find it used, it would be a nice find. I would definitely, if I saw this, buy it and reread it. Even now, I'd like kind of fuzzy on the details because it's like 7 months after I read it. But yeah, I would love to reread it already. The next book is Mindfuck, which is a book by Christopher Wiley, who is the Cambridge Analytica whistleblower. Woo! Mindfuck, Cambridge Analytica, and the Plot to Break America. So Christopher Wiley, the author, is not American, actually. He's Canadian, but he was a political consultant all through his career. I don't know what he does now. He's very offline now, which you will understand why as you read the book. But he was the whistleblower with Cambridge Analytica's shady stuff. And maybe you're like, Cambridge Analytica, what's that? So was I, but a podcaster that I really like had this on their list of books they recommend. Carrie Poppy from Ono, Ross and Carrie, rest in peace. She's not dead, the podcast is dead. It explains Cambridge Analytica in context with narrative, where it's like connecting all these names from the first Trump campaign and his administration. I am someone who, like, you could tell me something and then I'm gonna forget. Like, I learn how to play a board game and then I immediately forget because I'm like not working with it. But like when I'm in a story of something, when I am like working through something, I understand it a lot better, which I think is true for most people. So if you vaguely feel like you know what Cambridge Analytica is about, but like you probably couldn't explain it to someone, kind of like me right now, I would recommend this book. I'm going to try to explain it. Basically, Christopher Wiley was a data analyst, just kind of like a data guy who was working on political campaigns. He actually started working on targeted advertising with the Obama campaign in 2008. And after this Obama campaign, he was working on some other stuff in Canada. And then he moved to Cambridge. Not Cambridge. Cambridge Analytica is the name of the data broker people. But very importantly, they had nothing to do with Cambridge. They just chose the name because it was like, it sounded important and influential to be vaguely associated with Cambridge. There's like this whole part of the book where head of Cambridge Analytica, Alexander Nix, had like a fake office set up near Cambridge to like impress investors and people who wanted to like use the company for political campaigns and stuff. Specifically, I think they set it up specifically for Steve Bannon, but don't quote me on that. I have to like look up and confirm. But basically, Christopher Wiley winds up working for this Cambridge Analytica. It had a different name, but the name that they got a lot of press with, negative press, is Cambridge Analytica. But he's working for this company, and they're basically seeing how data gathered from people's Facebook accounts, because at the time there were all these like apps and quizzes that you could give permissions to on Facebook, and giving the permission that you just wanted to take the quiz was actually giving access not only to all of your information, but to everyone on your friends list as well. So just through like a couple 100,000 accounts, they were able to like have access to millions of people, I want to say. So they were able to make these really detailed profiles of like what type of person each individual account was, like what kind of personality type, what kind of psychological messaging you're more susceptible to. And using that information, they were able to micro target people. And this is what the Trump campaign paid into use of this data to micro target people who were already ultra right wing or had the potential to become ultra right wing. And they were kind of able to specifically target those people, group them together with Facebook groups. It was basically a lot of, is collusion the right word? Collusion? A lot of shady business. And then it doesn't seem like Wiley, the person whose point of view we're getting all this from, it doesn't seem like he totally knew where all the funding was coming from, but he did see like shady Russian people coming into the office as well. Steve Bannon, I think it was Steve Bannon. If it's not him, I'll write the name of the person who he met with. But this is like someone who really wanted to make America conservative again and was trying to find a way to do it back in like 2015, 2014, maybe 2013. I'll put the information. But he describes his meeting with this guy, and he was like the company representative that went to go meet with him. And Wiley says he didn't realize how much damage he was contributing to at the time that he was doing it. Who's to say? But the thing that I really enjoyed about this book, obviously I learned a lot. I don't know if my presentation of it made a ton of sense, but it made the whole crisis of it all like more tangible to me. And it also really highlighted how we all are like micro-targeted. Like I think we all know this because we have like different algorithms that like micro-target us for stuff. But even now, like I feel like I'm just so much more aware after having read this book that like when I'm being fed political content or anything that is like making me enraged, I'm specifically part of this Facebook algorithm hell machine that is like with my psychological profile in mind designed to like push all the right buttons. Not to say that it makes being online totally fun and no problems and I'm never angry or upset by things, but it's definitely like a good perspective. I said right after I read it that I felt like I walked away with a semester's worth of knowledge on the topic. I don't know how much it's stuck in my brain now, 7 months later. But after I finished this book, I was like, everybody has to read this book. It's like a 5-star nonfiction where I'm like, everybody I'm talking to, like, do you know this book? You have to read this book. My tagline review on Storygraph was Espionage, Modern Day Colonial Practices, a surprise appearance by Hugh Grant. There is a point where Hugh Grant appears in the narrative. I think it's because they were going to ask him for funding or something. Is this lighting weird? I feel like I look insane. Okay, well, and what I also really liked about this book, I liked that at the end, Wiley had a lot of like tangible, good suggestions for how we can like fix this kind of problem moving forward. Particularly, I really liked how he said that there should be some kind of professional and social consequences for the programmers who are kind of let loose to make new technologies. He talked about how important it is for like ethics to be in STEM education and have it be like a core component. Which I remember, I went to NYU and there was like they have a very famous business school, the Stern Business School. And I knew people who took Stern classes and like went on to work in finance. And the understanding among people at Stern is that like their ethics class is basically a joke. Like, I don't know if that's what Stern would say, but at the time, or at least the people I was talking to, it's very much like, you have to take this class, but nobody's like taking it seriously, you know? So that's kind of super discouraging to hear that the people who then go on to have a lot of power and influence in the financial sector just like don't have a comprehensive education or a whole lot of concern for those things. Nice. But yeah, I feel like I need YouTube video essay people to make essays about Cambridge Analytica. Anyway, Cambridge Analytica, bad. I had ambitions to make a video essay about Cambridge Analytica, but I don't know, it seems hard. The next book that I finished, so that was in June, Mind Book was in June. In July, I've read and I finished Everyone on This Train is a Suspect, which is number 2 in the Ernest Cunningham crime saga. Ernest Cunningham, well, he's an author about how to write mystery novels. So it's very self aware. Like the whole point of this series is that Ernest Cunningham is not like your normal detective. He's just a guy who really likes like Agatha Christie and murder mystery stuff. So much so that he wrote a really well selling ebook on how to write a murder mystery. But he winds up stumbling onto real murders. So goes the series. So the first one is everyone in this room is a suspect, I think. I read that a few years ago from the library. Everyone on this train is a suspect. I think I talked about this in maybe the mid-year freakout tag. But this takes place on a train. And so it's a train mystery. I thought it was fun. I don't really like murder mysteries because I'm kind of like, okay, we get it. I know some people really enjoy the whodunit of it all, and it can be fun, but I think when it comes to reading, I prefer reading more literary things. I like that kind of like movie. Like I love what are the Glass Onion, Knives Out, like the Knives Out movies. Those are fun. But I would say this book is funny. So that's why I enjoyed it. It's hard for me when there's not a lot of humor in the books. The author is a stand up comedian. I think that's what makes it more palatable, is that the delivery is self aware and funny when all these tropes are happening. I know there's like cozy mysteries where it's like, oh, it's so charming that all this is happening, or like other kinds of funny mystery stories, but I really enjoyed this specific brand of kind of breaking the fourth wall. And it literally tells you what tropes it will be following and like on what page the reveal is going to happen and how many times they're going to mention the real killer's name, like all these things. But I do think I like this series and I think I would read more from it. The next book, which I talked about in my did not finish, my DNF video, A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is a Shades of Magic #1. So this is the one I did finish. I made it sound like I didn't finish it. I feel like this is a very talked about book series, but basically there's 3 different Londons, and if you have special powers, you can like go between the different Londons, but only 2 people have the powers anymore. And then there's this girl, Delilah, and she gets swept up in it. Is it actually YA? I don't know. It felt YA to me. Interesting enough, I thought some of the writing was like confusing. I think I directly quoted several things. Like, for example, when I have finished with so and so character, I shall come back for you, and I shall take my time divesting you of your life. That was a confusing sentence because divest makes me think of like investing. Like to divest is to like remove power or like influence from something. So like divest someone of their life. That just feels that feels like a thesaurus pull. Another confusing moment I had, the smoke cloud center was smooth and glossy, like the fragment of stone in so-and-so's hand, or the surface of a scrying board, which is exactly what they had summoned with it. So like in that moment, they're saying that the surface of this thing looks like a scrying board because it is a scrying board. But like, why wouldn't you just say that it's a scrying board? I didn't enjoy the writing. I don't think that I am the intended audience. I think it's aimed at people who like don't care too much about the nitty-gritty with that kind of stuff, but it just really took me out of the moment. Oh, and there were just a lot of random cutaways and people dying for dramatic effect, which is like, sure, maybe that's exciting for the story, but yeah, interesting concept. The execution was meh. There are definitely people who enjoy this series, and there is like a specific type of young person who is like really into fantasy and like this kind of steampunk-esque genre that would really enjoy this. I'm just gonna say it's not for me, and now I know. Then I read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, by Mark Twain because I had never read it before, and my book club was reading James. So I decided to listen to the audiobook of Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. I gave it 4 stars. I feel like it's a classic. It's a classic for a reason, yada, yada, yada. When Tom Sawyer comes in at the end, I didn't know this because I knew that they were like semi-related and like Huckleberry Finn is a character in Tom Sawyer, but like Tom Sawyer shows up at the end and he's such a little creep. I've learned this from interviews with Percival Everett, but Percival Everett also hates Tom Sawyer, and I feel so much kinship with him. Listening to his interview, I was like, thank you. He's awful. And if you read James by Percival Everett, which is the next book that I read, you will know that Tom Sawyer does not come up in the book, and it's specifically because Percival Everett hates Tom Sawyer. I loved that. That was great. Good touch. So yeah, I finally read Huckleberry Finn. Because it is written in dialect, it was like kind of easier to hear it as an audiobook. So much use of the N-word, which I know that is not a hot take. It's just very jarring when you're first like, wow. And then it's also weird to then become like accustomed to the use of it more as the story progresses. Like it still felt intense at the end of the book to be hearing it, but not in the way that it hit in the beginning, which I think is like a scary lesson in how that kind of like hateful language can become so normalized. I'm gonna have this next book be the last one. I'll end it with James by Percival Everett because I have to go to my dance rehearsal. So James by Percival Everett, I wound up buying this audiobook, which audiobooks are so expensive. I think it was like $25. It was great. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. And like if I had to buy any audiobook, I guess I'm glad I bought this one. But wow, audiobooks are so expensive. Really enjoyed this book. I want to read more from Percival Everett. Again, like I said, I love that he hated Tom Sawyer so much that he just wrote him out of the story and he just doesn't even exist. Percival Everett is also just so funny. I recommend that you listen to an interview with him. Like I was listening on a podcast app. I just searched his name, and he said in one interview that his hope for this story was, well, I hope I didn't change anybody's mind about slavery. So that was very funny. He's a funny man. In preparation for this book, I think he said that he read Huckleberry Finn so many times, like front to back, and then would start again, front to back, start again, until he got sick of it. And then he just wrote James from memory. So I thought that was really interesting. The characters are excellent. It's funny. It's insightful. There's like a twist that I didn't see coming. I think a lot of people didn't see coming, and a lot of people are confused by. But I think it makes sense. It gave the story something different, like a little different note, kind of talking about ancestry and whatever. Anyway, I liked it. So yeah, I'm gonna leave there. So that was everything from June and July. Maybe I'll come back with this same setup, or maybe this will be its own video. Goodbye.